Welcome back, Budgeteers. Coach Nino Villa here, disciple of Christ, husband, father, and financial coach. And today on the New Money Habits podcast, I sit down with one of our Patreon contributors, up-and-coming rising star, Minelle Sarfo-Adu. Hey there, Budgeteers. The new year is here, and you know what that means. It's time for fresh starts and new habits. If one of your goals is to get better with your money, New Money Habits has exactly what you need to kick things off right: the Payday Power Planner. This isn't just any budget tool. The Payday Power Planner is designed to work with your pay periods, not just the calendar month. Why does that matter? Because it helps you to see exactly when your money is coming in and going out. No surprises, no guesswork. With the Payday Power Planner, you'll know if you're working with a surplus or facing a deficit, so you can make informed decisions about your money. It's not just a plan, it's the clarity and control you've been looking for to start the new year strong. Make this the year you finally build new habits for financial freedom. Grab your free Payday Power Planner from New Money Habits today and take the first step toward a better financial future. Visit newmoneyhabits.com now, because this year it's time for a better plan for your money. Welcome, Minelle. Thank you for joining us today. So happy to have you with us.
Hi, good to meet you all. I'm happy to be here.
Well, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. For our listeners, I'll give you a little bit of background. Minelle here, her passion for real estate and finance started at a young age. She is a first-generation American, and she saw firsthand the financial and housing challenges that her parents faced, which propelled her into helping others navigate financial literacy and home ownership, which I'm excited to talk to you about today. She understands what it is like to have to figure it out while supporting loved ones, and is here to provide the knowledge and guidance needed to make confident, informed decisions. With her expertise in real estate and financial coaching, she empowers her clients to achieve home ownership and create lasting financial security. And no matter where you are in your journey, she's here to support you every step of the way. Again, welcome, Minelle. So happy to have you with us.
Thank you. That was a great intro.
I want to share a sentiment that one of my partners shared, and that is, after he had a conversation with you and you kind of joined our community of financial coaches, he said of you that you give him hope for the next generation. That being as young as you are, but being as astute financially as you are, you give us. Now I'm turning it from singular to plural. You give us hope for the next generation. But I want to dive in a little bit first into your first generation American.
Yeah.
And with a last name like Sarfo-Adu, am I picking up French there?
So it's actually a Ghanaian name, and my parents are both from Ghana.
Okay.
Yeah, and they had me up in New York and grew me up north, and then I decided to move down south a little bit later, and I knew I always wanted to be in real estate. So I knew the best place to start would be in the south, because it's just such a growing area, and I really wanted to start there. And I also really like the warmth. I'm sick of the cold.
Hey, I'm originally from Buffalo, New York, so I know all about cold, but now I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, so I'm there with you. Like,
Yeah.
I had to escape those brutal winters and get into a place that the sun shines, more than 340 days out of the year.
It's a lot of days.
So what got you into, why the passion for real estate? You're on the younger side, you're in your 20s, mid-20s. Why real estate? Why financial literacy? How do you even know about these things, and what kind of got you started?
Yeah, that's like one of my favorite questions. So thank you so much for asking. So I just like to say that I like working with people who are seeking financial stability and freedom, and that population of people that started with nothing. So I'm using quotation marks because nothing is a really strong word here. And what I'm trying to express is I can relate to that population of people who come from parents with limited resources, education, language barriers, etc., because my parents had that, and they did the best they could with me. And I took that information and I wanted to push it out forward. So my parents are lower income family. We are immigrants. So everything American just wasn't in our set of cards. So I had to learn from the fly, and I felt like I was behind a lot because a lot of kids in my class would have all these resources and generational wealth, generational knowledge. They had all these things that their parents were able to pass down to them. And my parents were still trying to figure out the American way, the American tradition. Right. So,
Mm.
yeah. So I just wanted to share with other people that they can do what I've been able to do and figure it out because I felt like I had to figure it out. I mean, things like taxes, oh my gosh, it was just simple things like that. I mean, home ownership, when I was when I was an eighth grader, I had to help my parents with understanding how to fill out a rental form. The big words on there, I had to figure out what those definitions were. And I educated them, whereas a lot of other kids, other peers that were around my age, were not doing that for their families. They were just like, oh, well, what house are we going to be moving into? They weren't looking at the legality of it because I had to.
I was just going to say that's so interesting because on the flip side, I mean, partly flip side, because the other side of the
Yeah.
coin is I also came from a very poor family,
Mhm.
but I'm second generation. So my grandfather was born in Italy. My father was born here. I'm second generation, so there was a little bit more history, and by the time you get to my parents, he was fully assimilated and grew up here. But being poor and still not having a wealth of financial literacy knowledge,
Mhm. Mhm.
even though I didn't have to help like my parents apply for a rental or even buy a house, what I find interesting is while my father eventually owned a home, and truth be told, he owned multiple homes. He never sat me down to talk about home ownership. So
Mhm.
here you were at a young age learning on the fly because you're kind of forced into it.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Exactly.
on the flip side of that, my my father, who would have experienced something similar, did nothing to turn around and then educate the next generation. So I appreciate that you're at least learning, or you're at least willing to turn around and help somebody else learn.
Right. I mean, it was hard. It was really hard. I mean, I felt like it was a little bit unfair that I had to do all this because I was so young. I just wanted to be a kid. But I noticed there was a lot of other people that are my age that had to do that. And there's also people that are in their 20s, in their 30s that are still helping their parents with things like that. So it's not just my age of being 20. I mean, it was other people as well. And those people, they sometimes feel uneducated. They feel alone. They feel behind. They feel like they need to always support their families, but they don't know what to do. So I knew I had to get into this somehow. And I felt a passion for it. And I knew that I had to push the education that I learned and not let it go wasted.
So, what are some of those things that, when you think about emerging adults, I'll use that term,
Mm-hmm.
emerging adults,
Mm-hmm.
and what I mean by emerging adults is think about somebody who might be in their late teens, early
Yeah.
20s, uh, graduated high school, maybe off to college, maybe not, but
Mm-hmm.
so they're kind of emerging and they're taking on responsibilities for the very first time. What are some of like what's the 1, 2, 3 key things that you're like, oh, everybody needs to know this, and the earlier you can learn it, the better. Hey there, budgeteers. Good news can only be good news if there's bad news. So, what's the bad news? The bad news is you and I have a deadly disease called sin, and this disease causes us to rebel and disobey God. See, God is holy, righteous, and just, and He cannot be in the presence of sin. So, this horrible disease of ours separates us from the God who created us. And the bad news gets worse. There isn't anything you or I can do to make ourselves right with God. We are dead in our sins and on our way to an eternity separated from God. But that's not God's will for us. See, for God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him should not perish but have everlasting life. God did what only God could do. He made a way for us to be reconciled to Him through Jesus Christ. Jesus came into the world to save sinners like you and me. While we were still sinners, storing up God's anger against us for our rebellion and disobedience, Christ died for us. Jesus took the punishment that you and I deserve and have earned. Jesus is the substitute for your punishment and mine. Now, isn't that some good news? The word gospel means good news. The gospel of Jesus Christ is that you and I broke God's law and Jesus paid the fine. When we place our faith and trust in Jesus, we get to experience God's grace and mercy. Our gratitude should turn us from our rebellious and disobedient sin toward God, seeking after Him and His righteousness. When we do, God gives us a new heart and a new mind. Praise God for His goodness, and remember, God loves, humans sin, Jesus saves.
So the first thing would be a basic just financial awareness. Like, I mean, whether that be a budget, whether that be understanding how to pay a taxes, like it's just simple basic budgeting, which honestly I wish all high schools offered, but they do not. So unfortunately, you're going to have to go and pay for it somewhere else. And if you go on to Patreon, you're going to find a lot of coaches that can support you on that. And number two, I would say some housing education, whether that be a rental, whether that be you're staying with your family and you're learning how to pay bills by watching them pay bills and pay for their own housing. Some sort of just housing education. If you want to buy a house, then you should learn about that as well. And then for the third thing, it would be education. How are you going to further yourself in life? And is that going to be through college? Is that going to be through a trade? Is that going to be through straight career? It's just some sort of education. So those are my top three things that emerging adults should be focusing on. And also a fourth, I'm just going to add it in there, mentorship. I really deeply believe in mentorship. And you can find a mentor anywhere. You can find a mentor being your parents. They can be your friends. They can be somebody in a career space. They could be just a random friend that you find at a volleyball pickup. Mentorship. Everybody needs community. We need to build community, and we learn from those around us. So that's my 3.5.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the bonus one. And I think mentorship is like this lost or dying art where I don't know. I don't hear a lot of people necessarily talking about it. But it is definitely something that when you find yourself in certain circles, and so you mentioned career a moment ago, it wasn't until I started accelerating in my own career in corporate America where I realized, like, oh, mentorship is like a real thing. So sitting down with people who have much more experience, sitting down with executives when you are in middle to upper management and you want to get to the executive level, sitting down with executives and really learning from them, how they think and how they go about doing things that are just different than, lower to middle management, because they have to be visionaries. They have to be thinking way outside of the box, which is a different skill set than just simply managing a couple of people. And that's where I learned that mentorship was so incredibly important. So I'm so glad that you brought it up, that you recognize the value and the importance of mentorship to encourage, your peers of your age group, that's something that they should be seeking. So good on you for recognizing
exactly. Exactly. Like, how are you supposed to know where you want to be if you haven't seen it already? Or you aren't living it through somebody. You know what I mean? Like, you have to be able to actually see what is out there and see what is possible. And mentorship gives that. I started getting a mentor, I think in high school. My school deeply expressed mentorship, and I was in like a self-directed learning program, and every student was assigned a mentor, and it was just based on what you were interested in, and it might be a community mentor. So I had a real estate mentor at the time because I figured out I really wanted to be a realtor when I was like 13. I just haven't lost it since. And then financial coaching came a little bit later, but I discovered it. And I've just always had a mentor, somebody that I can look up to, and they're always pushing you to be better than they are. And you're just going to push them back so they can continue to grow. So you guys can continuously grow like this.
Yeah. Again, another astute observation. So all these years later, I recognize that whenever I've been mentored, or especially when I mentor somebody else, because I can obviously share my own experience a lot better than I can share somebody else's experience. But you're absolutely right. Like when I'm pouring into somebody, when I'm mentoring somebody, I want them to actually succeed at a higher level than what I have achieved. So it's like, hey, if you can learn from what I've done, learn from my mistakes as much
Right.
as you
Yeah.
learn from the things that I've done well, because I want to see people win at a higher level than I've
Yeah.
been able to achieve, because hopefully they get the information faster, sooner, earlier, and have more time
Exactly.
to
Exactly.
utilize it.
Yeah. My mentors used to say that too.
So how many, you just pluralized mentors. Yeah. How many mentors have you had, and what did that look like?
So I would say, I had, ooh, in high school, I had at least two or three. And then once I got into college, I had, ooh, three, but that I left the mentors before because I feel like once I've surpassed what they could have given me,
Mm-hmm.
I've gone to the next for like whatever more is interest based or
Yep.
whatever. And and currently right now I would say I have about three mentors, and they're all in different like types of mentors. I have a mentor that helped me with, I mean, building relationships, healing my own self-help, just like improving of my internal. And then I have a mentor that
Mm-hmm.
improves of my real estate business. And then I have a mentor that's just general business. And then I would even say you guys are my mentors. I come to you guys if I have questions. So I don't know, maybe I have a million. I try to find a mentor everywhere, wherever I go, so that I can always just continuously learn. Somebody that knows more than I do. Because, I mean, that's how we learn. So,
Yeah. 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 I know that we haven't necessarily sat down and talked about like, hey, can we be in like a mentor
yeah.
mentee relationship? But you are somebody who reaches out when you have questions, you're looking for clarity, looking for the best way to do something. And so you definitely put yourself out there and kind of establish those relationships naturally. I want to go back to something you mentioned in your top three. Number two, you talked about the education around home ownership, or understanding how you're going to live as an emerging adult. So
Mm-hmm.
um, I'm dating myself here, but like when I graduated high school and I got my first apartment, it was $300. It was really inexpensive. Um,
I wish.
and
I wish.
so yeah, right. The times have changed a little bit since then. But $300 a month. And so I could choose to rent. And what I've learned later on in life is, even when my father was charging me $200 a month in room and board, I didn't realize that that was half the mortgage, because again, he didn't sit down and talk to me about home ownership. Um, I'm not so concerned about the prices. I know that the prices are out of whack, but when you are thinking about educating and helping others understand the importance of deciding how you're going to live and home ownership, what does some of that conversation look like, and what are some of the things that you have them um, focus on so that they get educated, they get informed, so that they can make an informed decision?
Thank you for asking me. So, if I was high school Minelle, I would immediately start telling you about this. I created this curriculum. I created this course for high schoolers to learn about home ownership, racial discrimination in home ownership, and redlining, and all the things that came with it. That's what I would have immediately pushed to you. But now that I'm more of an adult, I will first just sit down with you, and I create a buyer's guide, and I have it from the way beginning to the way ending of what homeownership means and what it looks like. And I have revised it so that I can help college students. I've revised it so that I can help retirees, whatever you are. I'm trying to help you and meet you where you are. So
Mm.
from the beginning, I would speak about, what are your goals? Like, what does this mean to you? Why are you doing this? Just get to know you as a person so that I can actually fully support you. And
Mm.
then I would go into how I can help you and how I can meet you where you're at. And that might be, well, we need to get you with a lender. That might mean we need to sit down and talk about a budget. That might mean we're fully able to go straight into the buying process. That might mean we need to get you into renting because buying's not attainable for you right now. It depends. Everybody has a different circumstance. Everybody has a different situation. But I just try to fully express the importance of homeownership because I just so deeply believe that everybody deserves a stable nest to live in. And the reason why I'm calling home ownership a stable nest and not being a renter a stable nest, because renters, they can have their rent increased on them at any time. I mean, leases can be extinguished at any time, like we can just, it's not as stable as homeownership is. So that's why I express so much on homeownership, because I don't like seeing people having their homes taken away from them and having to find another place quickly.
There seems to be, and this is just like my own observation. I don't think there's any real studies that have proved it out, or if there are, I don't have them at hand, but there seems to be this sense that with the young generation, homeownership, I think some try to assert that they're not interested, that younger people aren't interested in home ownership. Do you see that, or like what's your take there?
I see that completely. I mean, okay, don't fact check me, but I thought I saw a study a little bit ago saying that people aren't even getting into home ownership until their late 30s. That is insane to me. That study really threw me off because I'm not even close to my 30s. I want a home. And, like I want my friends to have homes. I want everybody around me to be able to experience home ownership. I want them to be able to build equity and wealth through a home. And seeing that a lot of people aren't finding that to be something they're interested in is really confusing to me. And I know it because in my generation, what we see, like what's being seen now is they want to rent in a big city, live a fun life, and then they'll look at home ownership after they're married and have kids and something later on in life. And I'm like, do you see all the money that's just going away right now for the sake of fun? Fun, like, yes, you can have fun, but you can also have fun and build wealth for your future self. And I think we aren't seeing the line between it, and we're just seeing the now and not the later, which is a common thing for young people. They live in the now. That's what they like to do, and that's what young people always do. It's been seen throughout generations. But I think we need to start looking more into the later, because especially with the rising housing costs, the way the economy is looking, we really should be trying to settle our grounds and build something for ourselves, because we don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah, I'm so conflicted on this in one aspect, and that is I hear when a young person says, look, I'm not married yet, I don't have children, this is an opportunity to kind of, for me to figure out where I want to be, what I want to be, but focusing on the where, right? So if I buy a house, I'm establishing roots, and now I'm like kind of like stuck there. And what if I want to move from one big city to another? I have a client who just moved from New York to Oakland, clear cross country, right? Had he owned something in New York, it probably would have been more difficult to relocate. And so I hear that.
Right, yeah.
But is there any wisdom to be found in the idea that even if you weren't going to stay put, buying is still more beneficial than renting, or is renting really the way to go? Hey there, budgeteers. It's a brand new year, and that means it's time for new habits, starting with your money. Take charge of your finances in 2025 with New Money Habits Financial Coaching. This isn't your typical financial advice. New Money Habits is all about giving you the knowledge, tools, and support to make confident money moves and build a rock-solid financial foundation. Here's the deal. We're offering a free discovery session to kick off your journey to financial freedom. That's right, no strings attached. In this session, one of our expert coaches will help you to identify your financial goals and create a better plan for your money. We'll help you master your money mindset, sharpen your money management skills, and keep you accountable every step of the way. Make 2025 the year you say goodbye to financial stress and hello to the freedom you've been dreaming about. Schedule your free discovery session today and start creating the new money habits you need to achieve financial freedom.
That's a hard question. Okay, so I would say it just depends on the situation. I mean, if you have the upfront money, because I mean, I feel like we also have the upfront money. There's closing costs, there's upfront money that comes to buying a home, the down payment. And not everybody has the down payment. And even if you're putting a 3% down because of FHA, you might still not have the down payment. in that case, I could see renting working out. I could see that working out. Um, you also might have a job that's constantly sending you different places. I could see renting working out. I guess what I'm trying to say is short-term rentals has never been a problem for me. I mean, if you know you're going to be there for a short amount of time, by all means, then fine. You can stay there. I mean, and I'm thinking under 3 years, which is still giving a very long time in my opinion. But under 3 years, renting is
Hmm.
fine. You know, I could see that working out. But past that point, and you start developing roots, then you really should be looking into buying a home. And you really should be, if you have the ability. This is always if you have the ability. And if you do not have the ability, obviously speak with a professional, see what your options are. Um, but if you start establishing those roots, I couldn't see why you wouldn't want to benefit from it in some way, you know, benefit by gaining equity so your money is not just all going away towards a rental because you're not getting anything back. That money is going away to
Hmm.
somebody else's pockets. And it's better, even if you, let's just say you do buy that house and then you decide to move to Oakland, if you have the cash, you can still own that property and rent it out. So there is other
I'm
financial
so glad
benefits.
you said it.
Okay.
Yep. I'm so glad you said it because that's where I was going to go. Like, having a little bit of experience on you and your age group, I would say, ooh, here's like one of those mentor moments. If you were able to lock in a property now, maybe it's not even a property that you're planning on living in long term. It's
Right.
I'm just going to lock it in so that my cost of living doesn't continue to increase exponentially. Now, that comes with an asterisk, right? Property taxes can always go up, which affects a
Mm-hmm.
mortgage if your mortgage includes escrow every month, right? So
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
cost of living for owning a home can go up. It just
Yeah,
doesn't go
absolutely.
up exponentially
Yeah.
the same as renting. And now all of a sudden you have an asset that you can turn around and rent either short term on like an Airbnb or a Verbo, or get in long term uh, renters in there for a year, year and a half, or 2 years. And then you have somebody else paying your mortgage and paying the monthly bill on an asset that's appreciating in value. So I'm glad you said it because that's one of those things that I just want to help younger people understand that it even if you make a decision to buy a home, it's not forever.
It's
Doesn't
not
have to be
forever.
forever.
Yeah, a lot of people have that mindset. Oh, I don't want to stay here for the rest of my life. Then don't. Then leave. You can leave and you can still be gaining money from this. And honestly, you can take it even further. If let's just say you buy a duplex for your first ever property, right? And you lived in one half and the other person lived in the other half and they paid back your mortgage. Amazing already. You decide you don't want to live there anymore. You move all the way somewhere else. Now you rent out both of those units, and then one unit's paying that mortgage, other unit's paying your rental somewhere else. Like
Mm,
there are so many ways you can take this money. There's so many different solutions, and that is why you need to speak with a mentor, speak with somebody older than you, more experienced than you, because they can give you this type of insight because they understand it. Maybe they've done it. Maybe they've seen somebody else do it. That's the importance of wisdom and knowledge and experience from other people. It's really good to have, you know.
absolutely. What an incredibly inspiring conversation because or my hope would be that those listening would start to be thinking about things a little bit differently, right? Like, oh, wow,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even think about that. If I
Yeah.
own a home and I rent it out, at least I have an asset that's increasing in value and that sort of thing. And I think about this is just one of those I wish I knew then what I know now moments.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned earlier, my father, when he was charging me $200 room and board, his mortgage was his mortgage was probably around $400 a month, because at the time in the mid to late '90s, you could buy an entire house in Buffalo, New York for $40,000.
I
Right?
wish.
Had I known that, right? Had I known that, maybe I would have picked up a property or two along the way. And even when I first came out to Phoenix, Arizona, which Phoenix now it's not quite as expensive as California, but
But oh
I think
yeah,
about
it's
when I
still yeah.
first came out here, you could get a gorgeous home for 80 to $100,000. Those homes now are 800 to a million. And so, yes, it's been 25 years, but think about picking one of those up 25 years ago and having that type of equity where it would have already been paid off and it's valued at $800,000 or $1 million. Oh,
That's generational
if
wealth.
only I knew then.
That's
That's right.
generational wealth. Yeah.
So, tell our listeners a little bit about what you're up to right now, where they can find you, and what to be on the lookout for.
Okay, so I have just released a website called gazellegroup.co, and that is where I'll be doing a lot of my financial coaching outside of the Patreon app. So I'll cover topics such as your financial short-term and long-term goals, income and expenses, find the problem, find the solution. And I just want to highlight that we will create solutions, not one solution. And because I just don't want to limit people to one solution, because there's so many ways that you can resolve an issue, and sometimes it feels daunting to only have one option, and sometimes it feels like you're pressured to do that one thing. So then in the initial meeting, I'll just give you the materials you need to help you on your financial journey, and then I also will offer additional sessions that are available for an extra fee. But I offer real estate oriented sessions as well that talk about your housing goals, your budget, and your time frame. And that's just an extra thing. And then for an add-on, this is one of my favorite things. We can establish a money binder, and it's like a cash stuffing system. And those are my favorite thing to do for money management. And if you want to look into that method, obviously you can. If you book a session with me, that's an add-on. But then on Patreon, you'll see me on the Golden Nugget section, and I'll be having some short-term and long-term content as well with your membership, Patreon membership. And I'll be starting off with just 3 short series talking about real estate and finances. And the first series is called Back to the Basics. And this is as simple as they will get. I mean, I'm going over definitions of financial terms, establishing a money journal, setting up an emergency fund for 3 to 6 months, how much you should spend of your total income towards housing, which is 30%. So everybody knows 30%. And then how to calculate budgets. And then the second series is named Things Schools Were Supposed to Teach You, because they are not teaching you. So this is more of an in-depth financial knowledge that you should have learned from a traditional high school, going over the basics of creating a budget, how to buy a car, how to rent a home, college loans, how to calculate annual income, sorry about that, and then how to grocery shop, because a lot of people do not understand how to grocery shop. It's actually surprising to me. And then our third series is It Too Late for Me? So this series is targeted towards my older demographic, and they might have already come out of college. They maybe have gotten into their dream career, married, maybe have their first kid, and this is targeted towards them. And this is establishing like an HSA, budgeting for a home, which if you buy or rent, whatever's better for you, the breakdown on taxes, your W-4, budgeting for bills, saving for kid expenses and marriage, and you're out of college, so now what? And that's just essentially how I'm going to engage with the community, because I thoroughly enjoy doing this type of stuff. I know it for myself. I help my friends, I help my family, help the other people I'm working with, how to establish all these things. And now I'm ready to help you guys establish these things as well.
It's awesome. And I think it just goes to show how much there is to know about even just some financial literacy basics. I've really enjoyed our conversation about housing today, just because, again, I think the younger emerging adults need to hear that there is hope for them, and that even if they're not necessarily interested in setting and establishing roots somewhere, that there's still an opportunity to get into home ownership for just wealth creation, asset accumulation, and getting other people to essentially buy income producing assets for you by having a renter pay for those things. And I'm looking so forward to all the other things that you just mentioned, both on Patreon and hoping to have you back on the podcast in the very near future. Thank you for taking the time today.
Of course.
That does it for this episode of the New Money Habits Podcast. Remember, if you have any questions, make sure to hit us up on social at New Money Habits. and follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Please consider leaving a 5-star rating and review to help us spread this message of hope to people looking for a better plan for their money.